Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for the 17th of September 2020. My name is Adam Seaton. I'm the chair of the panel. The panel is currently live streaming from the council chambers in McMahon Street, Hurstville. I have panel members with me today: Julia Grant, who is one of the expert panel members, Michael Levy, who is another expert panel member, and Fiona Perdumo, who is the community representative on the panel. We are the panel who have been appointed by the Minister for Planning to determine specified development applications, including the applications that are on the agenda today in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. We've also been delegated the function of considering whether to put on exhibition today the draft Georges River Development Control Plan 2020. Now, firstly, acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting has been broadcast as that of the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm required to advise you that under the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, this meeting of the panel is being live streamed, and there'll be a recording made available on the council's website after the meeting. In accordance with the revised meeting protocols during the COVID-19 period, interested parties wishing to make their representations to the panel were requested to register their interests. A total of 15 people have asked to speak on the various items on the agenda today. The panel have reviewed the representations, and there are the people who wish to speak on the first item, which is 799 Forest Road, the application for the development application for the construction of 6 multi-unit dwellings at that address. We have 9 people who wish to speak against the recommendation, and 3 people who wish to speak in favour of the recommendation. In relation to the second item on the agenda, which is the application for the residential flat building at 54 and 54A Noble Street, we have 2 people who wish to speak in favour of the application. And in respect to the third matter on the agenda, which is the application for alterations and additions to an existing dwelling house at 121 Mimi Street, we have 1 person registered who wishes to speak in favour of the application. You just need to bear in mind that when you make your representations, you'll be asked to come online and speak to the panel, but just be careful that to note that any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language may result in the person using that language being exposed to liability for which the council and the panel take no responsibility. I also ask that when you are making your representations that you try and limit those representations to about 3 minutes. If you need a little extra time, we'll try and deal with that, but just to be fair to others so we can hear what everyone's got to say, 3 minutes would be good if that's if you could try and contain your submission within that time. We have 4 matters to consider tonight: 3 development applications, and then the application, the matter relating to the exhibition of the draft Georges River Development Control Plan 2020. As required by the Local Planning Panel Code of Conduct, panel members have to disclose any conflicts of interest in respect of any matter on the agenda. The relevant forms as prescribed by the New South Wales Department of Planning have been completed and are tabled for the council to be included in the online minutes of the meeting. Fiona Perdumo has disclosed the conflict of interest in relation to the draft Georges River Development Control Plan 2020 item on today's agenda. It will take no part in the discussions or decision-making process for that item. All panel members are also annually required to submit a disclosure of pecuniary interests and other matters form. The returns of the members who have filled in and completed that form are tabled at this meeting now, and they will be published on the council's website in accordance with the Act and regulations and the Code of Conduct. As we progress through the matters on the agenda today, only those persons who the panel have highlighted as wishing to speak will be able to make representations. The panel has reviewed the written representations that have been made with the forms that have been submitted by the persons asking to speak. And when you are asked to speak, I just ask that you speak as clearly as possible and at a volume that that can be heard, so that because people are viewing this particular meeting via the live streaming, so the louder you can speak, the better. Once we've heard the oral submissions on each matter, we then turn to the next matter to hear the submissions from the persons who wish to speak. Once we've heard submissions on all of the matters, we will then adjourn into a private and closed session to deliberate on each of the matters, and our decisions in relation to each matter will then be published on the council's website within 24 hours of the close of this meeting tonight. So I'm going to start now with the first item on the agenda, which is the development application relating to the site at 799 Forest Road, Peakhurst, which is an application for demolition of existing structures and construction of 6 multi-unit dwellings, associated vehicle accommodation and in-ground swimming pool landscaping and site works. As I indicated, we have 9 people who wish to speak against the recommendation in relation to this matter. I'll tell you their names in a moment, and 3 people in favour. The 9 people against the recommendation who wish to speak, and we're going to take their submissions in this order. Firstly, there's Graham McDonald. Next is Frank Johnson. Then John Blaine, Brian and Janice Griffin, Alan Baker, Mei-Ling Chen, Lorraine Thompson, Marlene Eberl and Matt Woodford. And then in favour of or supporting the recommendation, George Murad, Stephen Waters and Margaret Roberts. So could I ask that Mr McDonald firstly come online and speak to us in relation to the application. Mr McDonald, do we have you?
Members, Mr McDonald can't be contacted at this stage, but we do have Frank Johnson available to speak to you now.
Right, thank you. So Mr McDonald doesn't appear to be available. We haven't been able to contact him at the moment, but Mr Johnson, I understand, is available. Mr Johnson, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Mr Johnson. Just for the record, your full name is Frank Johnson, and can you just tell us your address, please?
793A Forest Road, Peakhurst.
Thank you. And you have concerns about the proposal that you want to tell us about this afternoon?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. So, as you've said, you have considered my detailed submission and presumably the summary that I provided recently. Out of that, there are 4 main points that I would like to emphasise. First up, the applicants have had ample time to submit a conforming DA. This development of 79 Forest Road has been going on since 2015, i.e. 5 years. 2 of the previous ones have been refused or deemed refused, and it's been to the Land and Environment Court. So I think they have adequate time to get to a conforming application under the old planning regulations. Secondly, I would say that the current application is not an amendment, as been stated, but is a totally new scheme. It's gone from 2 to 5 double-storey dwellings, which is not, in my book, an amendment. I have spent a long career in civil engineering, in building and construction works. If a contractor came to me with a submission saying we've amended the plans like this, I would reject it on the spot and tell him to go back to square one and start again, go through the whole process again. It's not an amendment. On the other hand, I guess if I was a contractor, as I was in my end of my career, I might have tried it, but only as a try on and not with any real hope of success. Thirdly, the scale of development is inappropriate in my view and completely out of character with the area. If you look along Forest Road between Samuel and Isaac Street, there are 2-storey dwellings, but they are usually or mostly duplexes at the front of a block, or a 2-storey dwelling and then single-storey villas. There is nowhere where we see 2-storey dwellings all the way down the block. And I think the application should be rejected on this basis alone. My fourth point concerns the drainage in Dawn Street. Again, as with my civil engineering hat on, I cannot see the council's solution that has been put up with the development to pipe water from 799 under Dawn Street straight into the stormwater main is anywhere practical. It will help the people from 799 if the new development went ahead, but it would be a disaster for Dawn Street. This is caused to a large extent, I would see, by the highly impervious nature of the development. So there was nowhere on site for the water to be treated. In my own place, we have an absorption trench in the backyard, which takes all our stormwater. It doesn't go through to Dawn Street. But with the impervious development, the number of dwellings and the paving, etc., swimming pools, there's nowhere for this to happen. I think this is unacceptable. That's my 4 key points. So I thank you for the opportunity to put my views across. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Does any panel member have any questions of Mr. Johnson? No, we thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for the concise way that you've put your submission, and you can continue to listen in or view the webcast that's being made through the live stream at the moment. I'll now ask Mr. Blaine, the next person who wishes to speak, to come online. Mr. Blaine, are you there, please?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Can you just tell us, just for the record, your full name is John Blaine, and if you can just tell us
my name is John Blaine. I live in 7 Dawn Street, Peakhurst, and I have lived here for about 59 years.
Thank you. And can you tell us your concerns, Mr. Blaine?
My concern is the water. It's supposed to be coming through from 799 into Dawn Street. When they did the original one in 2015, it was knocked back, and then because of the water coming into Dawn Street, and it flooded Dawn Street. Then on the next one, they said, all right, we won't put the water onto Dawn Street, we'll put the water under Dawn Street. And they've put a drawing through us to put new pits in there, and dig up Dawn Street and run the pipe down to connect to the pipe that's under my place. But if you go back to the meeting that was held on the council meeting on the 1st of July 2015, the council drainage engineer has determined that the existing 300mm pipe in Dawn Street is under capacity by 50%. Now that is on page 324 of that particular council meeting. And there's sort of any extra stormwater drain that comes in from the 6 extra houses that are going to be up there is still going to flood Dawn Street.
All right. We've seen that in your submission, Mr. Blaine. We've also called for a copy of the report that you referred to.
And also, I've got another letter. Sorry.
Mr. Blaine, no, you continue. Just tell us what you wanted to say.
Okay, I've got another letter that I wrote to council, and they said that when they were doing all the flood surveys through here, we didn't get a letter, but I rang and got in touch with a letter and got a letter back from Mr. L. Turk, who was a drainage engineer. So, and I think when they've put this latest thing through to put the water under Dawn Street, the council on that thing, the council engineers have said that if you go to what the page I put in first up, issue number 1, where it says, I reject the senior development investment officer recommending that the application be granted deferment commenced concern and according to the conditions, including the report, because of the following. But then he hasn't taken into consideration that the existing pipe under Dawn Street is 500% or 50% under capacity. And the council have written that in their report going back to July 2015 on page 324 of that report.
Yes. All right, were there any other concerns that you had, Mr. Blaine?
My main one is with the flooding in Dawn Street.
Yes.
We've got 9 houses here now, and occasionally we still get flooded. If we have an extra 6 coming through from 799, we're going to have more flooding. And as far as the rain goes, I can supply you with information. I've been keeping the rain gauge since 1988, and I've got it all written down on paper, and I can give you a copy of it.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Blaine. Are there any questions for Mr. Blaine from any panel member? No. We thank you for your submission, Mr. Blaine. We're going to now move on to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker I had on my list was Brian and Janice Griffin. I'm not sure whether it's Mr. or Mrs. Griffin who is going to speak.
It's Mr. Griffin was on
Mr.
the
Griffin, are
line.
you online?
It's Brian Griffin here.
Oh, Mr. Griffin, yeah, Mr. Griffin. So your full name is Brian Griffin. If you could just tell us your address, please, for the record.
Yes. My address is number 6 Dawn Street, Peakhurst,
Thank you.
and I've been here for about 50 years. But before we start, I've been getting a message from Graham McDonald, who was supposed to be first up.
Yes.
They were calling his name. He's been waiting for you, but his phone number that he gave you, which is 0422 972 094, he's still waiting to get on. But I heard the lady saying, is that Graham McDonald? And Graham's still waiting. So
Well,
in the meantime, you might be able to take him up.
Thank you. We'll try him again.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you. If you'd like to tell us your concerns, then please, Mr. Griffin.
Yes. We regard this proposed development that does not comply with council requirements for the overland flood study. It exposes additional threats of flooding into lower Dawn Street homes. Council recognises flooding in Dawn Street from events and flood mapping. Video of flooding events were put on record by Mr. Mazrin El Tug. Council Draining Engineer report in July 2015 states that the existing 300mm pipe in Dawn Street is under capacity 50% AEP, and extra stormwater will impact on the pipe's capacity, street and adjoining homes. This proposal of an additional curved gutter pit is of no use, as it will fill with the stormwater from gutters that already flows down the street. These amended plans are more bulky in design and further increase the negative impact on immediate neighbours' homes in both Dawn Street and Forest Road. You'll find that 90% of available land is dominated by an impervious structure. The change to 5 double-storey units and a single plus concrete drives and paths trying to handle surface stormwater is an overdevelopment. We were shown no new drainage plans. This has left neighbours in the dark to how previous stormwater problems raised by council had been addressed. There was pits and drains that were asked to be accounted for in regard to 50% of blockage, but no information on this was given over. Please consider the executive summary of doubt of how an easement down the side of 4 Dawn Street, Peakhurst can exist in the location of an existing Sydney sewer easement. My side passage has the Sydney sewer easement in it, but it's only 1.6 metres wide. Now, according to the plans that we saw earlier on back in 2015, a 225 millimetre pipe going down 4 Dawn Street required a easement of 2.1, and the area there is only 1.6, so I can't see how that's going to help. Now, there will be significant loss of sunlight due to the shutting on our sunroom, back bedroom, back closed roof hoist area, and there is only 1 to 2 hours of winter sunlight afforded to these areas in the back bedroom. The back bedroom only gets 1 hour of winter sunlight. Now, I've also written to council to let them know we are concerned for our health, as both my wife and I have long suffered respiratory complaints. My wife has scarring on the lungs, and I am an asthmatic with hospital admission. Any loss of sunlight is detrimental to our health. The proposed design has units 3, 4, 5 and 6, showing no separation between them, resulting in a continuous wall like a factory complex. We at number 6 would have to look at this factory type wall, and it's completely out of character with what's going in the area. The development raises also a precedent regards the flooding of down street homes. If other future Forest Road developments could then turn around and ask to pipe stormwater into an already overboard in Dawn Street if this goes ahead, and I would like it refused. Regarding the vehicle exiting or entering Forest Road via 2 driveways on a bend in the road appears hazardous. 2 cars exiting at the same time could have blocked view of traffic flow. We note that the native turpentine trees are on site are under protection of council and PGOS and should be retained. Now, for those who are not familiar with the council flood planning, developments are supposed to demonstrate that the development will not increase flood risk to owners and occupants of neighbouring properties downstream and the general public. Well, this clearly does pose a big threat to numbers 7, 8 and 9 of the cul-de-sac of Forest Road, and my house will be flooded by surface water coming through the drains that become blocked, and the actual OSD tank that we looked at earlier in 2015 filled up in about 15, 19 minutes. So any overflow from that goes down into Dawn Street. The Land and Environment Court noticed that a tank of that type of construction must have a sign on it saying this tank is subject to flooding. So that clearly indicates the dangers that we have. Now, in regards to zoning rules, last year the zoning rules changed that wouldn't allow this type of construction. But we ask you to look at this application again in view of the new rules, because changing from what they had originally proposed to this massive 5 double stories and a single unit plus a pool and changes the driveway, it's certainly a new construction and should be required to be looked at under the new rules, not simply tagged onto the old rules to try and sneak it through in time. I'm aware of grandfather clauses, but gosh, there's got to be a limit somewhere. Well, that's about my input, and I thank you for letting me contact you and express my interest.
No,
I have documented all this for the council. Thank you.
Yes, and we have your submission to Mr. Griffin, which we've read. So thank you for that, and the way that you presented this afternoon. And you're welcome to continue listening or viewing the live webcast if you have facilities to do that. I'm now going to move on to unless are there any questions of any panel member of Mr. Griffin? No. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Griffin. I'm now going to move on to Mr. Baker. Mr. Alan Baker, are you there? Mr. Baker?
Hello.
Mr. Baker, are you there?
I am.
Mr. Baker, this is Adam Seaton. I'm the chair of the local planning panel. Can you just confirm, and for the record, Mr. Baker, your address for us?
Yes, my name is Alan Baker and my address is 914 Forest Road, Peakhurst.
Thank you. And you have some concerns about the proposal?
I do. Now, this development is not, for proposed development, is not going to directly affect me, but it's going to affect my friends who live in Dawn Street, whom I've known for over 30 years.
Yes.
Certainly Brian and Janice Griffin, John Blaine, especially, are the people that I've had the most to do with, but I also had dealings with Brian's sister, who's now passed away, who used to live in number 9, Dawn Street, Peakhurst.
Okay.
As it stands at this stage, the DA is not, with what the new, what they classify as amendments are not amendments, it's an entirely new set of plans. It completely overturns what was originally designed to do. This thing doesn't do it, unfortunately. The main issue that I have with it is the drainage. One thing that I couldn't find is any new drainage drawings. My son actually did the calculations and so forth for the previous one that was knocked back. His qualifications, he's got an honours degree in mechanical engineering from Sydney University with high distinctions in fluid dynamics. So I think he knows what he's talking about regarding flows. The overland flow studies and so forth that were carried out earlier on stated the 300 millimetre discharge line that's in the street is already overburdened by 50%. There is no proposal at this stage to upgrade that drainage line, and I have personally taken video footage from Brian and Janice's lounge room on the big storms where water was lapping on the inside of Brian's driveway on his property. That's before any extra burden put on by this proposed development. Also, I've seen the issues that John Blaine has experienced after the big rains, and we do get them. And what's going to happen with this proposed development is because of the amount of impervious surfaces that are there, the water's got to go somewhere, and it's always going to find its lowest point. Lowest point, unfortunately, is going to be Dawn Street. So they are my main objections, but the other part of the objection is, and it was stated earlier, that this proposal's been going on since 2015. It's been knocked back twice by council. It's also been knocked back by the Land and Environment Court, and what was proposed initially has nowhere near the amount of impact that this new proposal has got. So I would strongly suggest to the panel that that this proposed development be rejected.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Any questions of Mr. Baker from any panel member? No, thank you, Mr. Baker. Thank you for your submission this afternoon. We're now going to move on to the next speaker, and you're welcome to continue.
Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ms. Chen. Ms. Chen, are you there?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Mei-Ling has dropped out, so we might just go down to Marilyn, and then I will attempt to get Mei-Ling back.
I had Mrs. Thompson next. No, not available.
No.
Right,
Marilyn, she's number 8 on your list.
All right. Mrs. Aberle.
No, it's Marie Leonard, Eberly,
Oh, Marilyn,
number 1
Eberly.
Dawn Street.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Beverly, are you able to tell us what your concerns are?
Sorry?
Can you tell us what your concerns are? About
Yes, my concerns are, like all my other neighbours in Dawn Street, this overdevelopment, and it's going to cause nothing but havoc in our street with the stormwater, and they flood badly at the end of the street. So I am definitely against this overdevelopment. It's not a good thing for our street or for the area. So, as I've stated before, I find it all a little bit, where's the thing? It's just not for us to have this to go ahead. So basically the neighbours have said it all, so I don't think I can add much more.
Thank you, Ms. Beverly. I appreciate it.
So I do reject having this overdevelopment. Yes, I'm very concerned for my neighbours. We're all friends, and I've been in this street for 51 years, so we obviously love our street, and we object to all this other business going on.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Everly.
And
We have your written document as well, where
yes.
you've summarised your
Yes,
concerns.
yes,
that you've read,
yes,
so
thank
for that.
you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
We're going to move to the next speaker. Do we have Mr. Woodford?
We'll go to Mr. Woodford, yes.
Mr. Woodford, are you there? Mr. Woodford?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
I can now, Mr. Woodford. Thank you. My name is Adam Seaton. I'm the chair of the panel today. Mr. Woodford, can you just confirm your address for us for the record?
51B for Bravo, Isaac Street. So my back fence is the side fence of 799.
Thank you. Now, you've heard what others have had to say. Do you want to tell us what your concerns are about the proposal?
I share most of my concerns with starting from Mr. Johnson and working the way down. There are a couple of things I'd like to add. Having gone through the plans in some detail, I feel the plans are quite inconsistent, particularly with regard to demolition plans and the claims within the EIS about the landscaping and the incomplete nature of the arborist's report. All of those were either inconsistent or lacking in detail or just inaccurate. So that's a pretty significant concern from my point of view, because the basis of those reports form the decision-making process. I share my neighbours' concerns about overdevelopment and the fact that it's out of character with the surrounding area. I think we all know what the profile looks like and compared with the neighbouring area. All of the local multi-dwelling sites are of stocked character to the front. There's nothing like the area as far as I can determine, and I think from that point of view it sets an awkward precedent. The other awkward precedent sets that of the treatment of stormwater, as I think Mr. John, someone a little later said, this means that everybody can start pumping water into Dorset Street. That's clearly a concern there. And really my last point around the application, well, I understand it was only recently drawn to my attention, there is some effect of this being a modification to an existing application compared to being a new one. So as I understand it, it's either a new application, and it shouldn't be treated as a new application, and I think it probably is a new application, from my point of view, or it's existing. Now, council took an existing application on this site all the way to the end, and so council viewed it as an existing application. Council has already rejected it and viewed it as inappropriate. So either way, this is something that should be rejected, either because it's new and out of the planning, or because it's the same thing which was already approved, which council pulled all the way to land. And that's one. Obviously, the rest of the detail, look at the PDF. But thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Woodford. Any questions of Mr. Woodford? No, thank you.
Sorry, yes.
We're going. I'm sorry. There is a question here, Mr. Woodford. Can you just hold on for a moment?
Yes, certainly.
So, Mr. Levy, who's one of the panel members, would like to ask you a question. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Press it down.
Thanks, Mr. Woodford. Just wondering if you could explain what your concerns are with the landscaping plan and the arborist report.
The arborist report particularly is listed as incomplete or preliminary report. The only one that I could find on the website when I replied originally back in June was the initial report dated some months before, and I'm just looking at my response here. And sorry, that was the arborist report. Let me just have a look and see what I've said. I've detailed this in my submission at the end of June. So pardon me while I look it up. So the EIS claims that the existing mature landscaping will be retained. And so this is can't see how this is true. There are 8 mature trees, some quite tall, that will be destroyed. I can't see anything in the landscaping that will be retained.
That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr.
Right,
Woodford.
thank you.
I think that's all the questions we have of you. So thank you for speaking this afternoon. We're now going to move on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll actually get myself where I may be. I'm well out of it, so I will use myself and follow this online if I may.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
I'm going to try and contact Mr. McDonald now.
Mr. McDonald again, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. McDonald. Are you there? Mr. McDonald? Mr. McDonald? Good afternoon, Mr. McDonald. Are you on the line?
094.
Just try again, panel.
You can try and get now. That'll be good. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Is that Mr. McDonald? Mr. McDonald, are you on the line?
We tried this, Chen.
Good afternoon, Miss Chen. Good afternoon, Miss Chen. Mei Ling, are you on the line there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Mr. Chen, this is Adam Seaton. I'm the chair of the local planning panel at Georges River Council. We understand you'd like to speak in relation to the application for the multi-dwelling housing development at 799 Forest Road.
I already write a letter to the council, and I think I just let you know because in my street is the flooding soon, and we live in the bottom of the street, so it should be very serious for the flooding. So I worry about if they're building the 5 double story and the 1 single story in the house. Maybe connected to the sewers in my street, maybe getting worse. So that's my thinking. I just let you know. And I think in this area, if living too many people, maybe the noisy, maybe the noisy, the car movement make some the trouble. So I just let you know what I want.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. We also have your written document that we've read that sets out your concerns. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
No. I already wrote everything on the letter.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for submission this afternoon. We're going to now go on to the next speaker, but you're welcome to listen in or view the webcast if you like. Thank you. Can we try Ms. Thompson, please?
Good afternoon. Is that Mrs. Thompson? Good afternoon. Is that Mrs. Thompson? Do I have Lorraine on the line? Hello, Lorraine?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Well,
There you
thank you. Mrs. Thompson, this is Adam Seaton. I'm the chairperson of the Georges River Local Planning Panel.
Right.
I understand that you wish to make an oral submission this afternoon in relation to the development application for 799 Forest Road.
Yes, that's right.
Now, can you just confirm for us your address and then tell us your concerns, please?
My address is 795 Forest Road, Peakhurst.
Thank you. And if you'd just like to tell us what
And my concern is...
I'm not sure whether you've heard others speak this afternoon, but if you agree with what they say, you can tell us that. And if you have any other concerns, you can tell us those as well.
Yeah, I probably agree with whatever they say. My objections is mainly loss of privacy, loss of natural light. Traffic coming in and out of there on the Forest Road will be tremendous. I mean, you can't see now if people park out the front. And I'm sure they would have 2 or 3 cars per unit. Air conditioning noise due to the size of the units. The construction of a swimming pool. Any runoff that goes into Dawn Street and floods down there because the drainage down there is not satisfactory. And apart from that, I think what everybody else says, you know, I agree with that.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Any panel member got any questions of Mrs. Thompson? No? All right, thank you for telling us your concerns this afternoon. You're welcome to continue listening or to view the webcast. I'm now going to move on to the next speaker. Hopefully we found Mr. McDonald. Thank you.
We've called Mr. McDonald, and so Mr. McDonald, is that you? Are you on the line? Hello, Mr. McDonald, is that you?
Yes, speaking, yes.
Thank you.
Apparently there was some mix-up with my number.
That's all right, Mr. McDonald. I think we now have you, which is excellent. We've had some difficulty, there's just been some technical difficulty, but we've now found you, which is good. My name's Adam Seaton. I'm the chair of the Georges River Local Planning Panel, and we understand you'd like to say something about the development application.
I can't. Yeah, can I talk now?
Yeah, just if you could just confirm your address for us and then tell us your concerns. There have been a number of other speakers who've told us their concerns. And if you agree with those, you can tell us. And if you've got other concerns, you can tell us about those as well.
Okay, all right, yep. My name's Graham McDonald. I live at 2 Coronation Avenue, Peakhurst. And I have concerns about the overdevelopment that's going to occur at 799 Forest Road, Peakhurst. Because it's been fully opposed by local residents since the first inception in 2015, and it was only granted a land and environment approval on certain conditions being met within a certain period of time, and I don't know how council was able to accept the application this time without those conditions also being included, because from what I understand, the application was accepted without the drainage plans, which were part of the land and environment requirement. And if that's the case, the application shouldn't be accepted. And the zoning now does not accept that sort of development in the area. And I'm just totally can't understand how it was accepted, because I have actually done some applications through council myself, and it gets rejected at the very start if you haven't got all your completed paperwork lodged. So how is that possible, and how is it still going on through the planning process?
All right, thank you, Mr. McDonald. Were there anything else you wanted to say in relation to the application that hasn't already been said?
Well, I don't know, because I didn't hear what was being said. The only other thing is about the trees. Has anything been said about the trees?
Tell us your concern about the trees, if you like.
It's just that if they claim, as they claim, that their drainage is problems are being solved by them capturing the water and pumping it through to Dawn Street, which will normally flood. I just can't understand how the trees are going to survive as they are, because they're stopping the natural water course from running to the trees and watering them. And they're building right up to almost the canopy area of the trees. So where's the water going to come from for the trees, especially in summertime and when it gets dry? And I've lived in the area for 37 years, and I know that it gets dry in summer. You know, and that doesn't seem to come into their plans.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Are there any questions that any panel member has of Mr. McDonald? No, thank you, Mr. McDonald, for your submission this afternoon.
Okay.
We're now going to hear from some other speakers who are speaking on behalf of the applicant, but you're welcome to listen in or view the webcast. Thank you.
Okay.
We have three people who wish to speak on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Murad, Mr. Waters and Ms. Roberts. Are we going to hear from them all together?
I'm going to call them all in at the same time, if that's okay.
Do that, please. Thank you.
Mr. Murad, are you there? Good afternoon, Mr. Murad. Are you on the line there? Good afternoon, Mr. Murad.
Hello?
Hello, is this Mr. Murad?
Yes, it is.
No, it's Nicole from Georges River Council. You're just with the panel. I'm just going to call Stephen and Margaret in as well, and you can all address the panel at the same time. I'll wait for a second.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Well, I have Steve with me, so we can talk off the same phone. Yes. Okay.
Oh, so, Mr. Waters, you're with Mr. Murad, are you?
Yeah, that's correct.
Excellent. And we had Ms. Roberts. We were going to get her online as well.
Thank you.
She's not with you?
Oh, no.
No. Okay. We'll just try her and get her on the line at the same time as you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Roberts. Are you there?
Yes, hello.
Yes.
Good. Okay. I think just confirm. So we have Margaret Roberts from GOT and Associate Planners. Is that right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes,
And we
Mr.
have
Chair.
Stephen Waters from LMW Design Group. Mr. Waters, are you
That's
there?
correct.
Thank you. And Mr. Murad, who is representing the applicant.
Yes.
You're there, Mr. Murad. All right. Thank you. You have the. My name's Adam Seaton. I'm the chair of the panel. I have the other panel members with me who were introduced earlier. And you've heard the submissions made orally this afternoon, I hope, from the persons who wish to speak against the recommendation for approval of the development. Firstly, was there anything you wanted to say in response to either the objections that have been made or in relation to the recommendation in the report?
Mr. Chair, sorry.
Margaret, please.
Ms. Roberts, did you want to speak on that? Thank you.
I would, Mr. Chair, thank you. We have read the assessment report and we agree with the recommendation. We have no issues with the deferred commencement consent. I did listen to all of the neighbours and their concerns, and I'm happy to answer any questions that have been raised by either the objectors or the panel members. I would like to just go briefly into, I guess, a little bit of the history of the application, if I could.
Yes, if you could be brief in relation to it, that would be good. Thank you.
Yep. There was an application approved by the court in 2017, and it was a deferred commencement consent, which only gave 12 months. However, that time frame wasn't met. That DA was done by a different architect and planning consultancy. We then got involved last year, and this DA was submitted in September of 2019. Amendments have actually been made to the DA, and they are in response to concerns that council officers raised in their request for information letter that was sent in December of last year. So the amended plans that have been submitted in April of this year are in direct response to the concerns raised by council officers.
All right. Was there anything else you wanted to say in relation to matters raised by objectors or in relation to the report itself?
No, I think
Margaret, I do want somebody to address this issue about the potential for flooding in Dawn Street, if there is somebody in your team who's able to speak on that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's Steve Waters here from LMW Design Group. We did the original stormwater drainage design on the one that was approved under the Land Environment Court, and we've subsequently modified our design in accordance with the new amendments. The stormwater drainage is actually in Dawn Street will actually improve due to the development. At the moment, the water is coming as an overland sheet from Forest Road, past the footpath and travelling down to Dawn Street. There's no inlet pit in Dawn Street except for the bottom of the cul-de-sac.
Mr. Waters, do you mind, Mr. Waters, sorry, we're finding it a little difficult to hear you. Do you mind bringing the phone closer to you if you could?
Oh, certainly. Sorry.
That's much better. That's much better. Thank you. Much better.
Yeah, it's better. All right. So sorry. Look, I'll start again. Well, I did the original submission before the Land Environment Court, which is the one that was approved. And look, the problem is that there is no inlet pits in Forest Road down where the roundabout is, where the junction of Samuel Street is. Along Samuel Street, the only inlet pit is down the bottom of the cul-de-sac at Dawn Street, right? So the eddy water overland flowing from Forest Road travels down to Dawn Street, travels down the gutters and goes into the bottom of the cul-de-sac in front of number 7 Dawn Street, which has, if you have a look at it, metal plates over it for access to their garage, which hampers the flow in as well. The problem, the proposal has an OSD. We capture the water on site with a OSD tank of 56 cubic metres for a 1 in 50 year storm. We throttle down the flow to 45 litres per second and go into an easement, and the proposal puts it underground with a new surface inlet pit in the gutter in front of number 4 Dawn Street. So it catches, the new surface inlet pit will catch the water flowing down Samuel Street, a bit from Forest Road, down Samuel Street and down the major part of Dawn Street on the western side. The flow that it's been throttled down to is 45 litres per second, and when you look at it in the realm of a development, you normally have discharge rates of 25 to 30 litres per second for a dual occupancy. So the overland flow is being actually caught in front of the units proposed and then put underground. The council requirement on the original submission was that we had to enlarge the pipes to take it into the pit at the back of the development to allow for excessive flows, and that's why we've got the 225 diameter pipe goes into the discharge pit into Dawn Street. The actual flooding will be reduced in Dawn Street in the cul-de-sac because we're catching the water and we're putting it underground before it actually hits the inlet pit before number 7 Dawn Street. I'd like to also talk on the arborist, the structure, the first submission that was approved under the Land Environment Court was concerned of the structural impact on the root system of the trees to be preserved. We put a submission forward and part of the deferred commencement of the original one was to not have any footings in the ground for the residences. So we did a structural design which involved hand-dug piers in the root zone and no footings being dug in the ground for the units that are built over the tree zone. The proposal now has raised the ground floor slab a further 150 millimetres, which will make this even easier and more efficient to comply with. That none of the footings will be dug into the ground around the tree zone other than hand dug piers.
All right. Are there any questions that any panel members got of any of the applicant's representatives? We do have a question. Mr. Perdumo would like to ask a question, gentlemen, and Ms. Roberts, if you'd like to do that. Thank you.
Just to Ms. Roberts, just with one of the objectors, I believe it was from 795, which is directly north of the site, raised some concerns about acoustics from the air conditioning units. Did you, I couldn't notice those on the drawing. Could you just clarify where the where the air conditioning units are proposed to be located for Unit 1 and Unit, I believe, 6 along the northern boundary? Do we have that information yet, or has that?
No, we don't. Unless Mr. Murad can elaborate, but we have not put that detail in the DA stage.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we haven't noted any air conditioning units on the P6 certificate either.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. What's 795?
Are there any other questions from any panel member? The only question I had, and this is probably to Ms. Roberts, there's a control in the development control plan that speaks of limiting the height at the rear of the site to 1 story. The development in this particular case doesn't seem to do that. Can you, Ms. Roberts, give us an explanation as to why that particular provision shouldn't be complied with in the circumstances of this case?
Yes, the original scheme that was submitted to council, we did propose single-storey dwellings at the rear of the site. That design actually, it had a larger building footprint and a longer driveway down the middle of the site, and also the setbacks to the rear boundary came closer. So as part of the amended design that we put back into council this year, our rationalisation was that having a 2-storey element on the northern side of the property was appropriate in the sense that we reduced the building footprint of the development. We created substantial setbacks to the rear boundary, and we've got to the 2-storey elements of units 4, 5 and 6, the minimum we're looking at is 9 metre setback to the rear boundary. We've also kept Unit 3 as a single-storey element, as we consider that to be the most critical corner of the development site in terms of overshadowing potential to adjoining properties. So we have kept the majority of the building element along the southern boundary as single-storey. However, we have proposed 2-storey on the northern side, as we can still achieve solar access to the courtyards of the development and the adjoining properties.
All right. Are there any other questions? No, we don't have any other questions of the applicant's representatives, so unless there's anything more you wanted to say on the application, that completes all of the speakers on that application. We thank you for your submissions this afternoon. We will now move on to the next matter, and our decision will be made on this matter in a closed session tonight and published on the council's website tomorrow. But thank you for attending. You're welcome to listen in on the other matters or view the webcast. But we're now going to move to the next matter on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda tonight, item 2, is the development application relating to the site at 54 and 54A Noble Street, Alawa. That's an application for demolition of existing structures, lot consolidation, and the construction of a 4-storey residential flat building containing 8 apartments with basement car parking for 12 vehicles with associated landscaping and site works. I have registered to speak on that matter 2 people on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Caravellis and Mr. Moroz. Can I ask that they both come online together?
Hey, Alan.
Thank you. Mr. Caravellis, you're there, Mr. Caravellis?
Yes, ma'am. I have Mr. Moroz here with me as well.
Excellent. So you're both together. Thank you. Gentlemen, you have the report and the recommendations in the report. Was there anything you wanted to say in relation to the report or the recommendation?
Yes, I lodged the letter covering some of the issues raised. I don't know whether the chance to read that letter.
Yes. We do have your letter. It's a letter. It's a letter dated the 18th of September. Is that the one you're speaking? Sorry, 16th of September.
Yes, correct.
Mr. Caravellis, that's the letter you're speaking of.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yes, we do have that letter. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, it's Bernard Moroz here. We have actually reviewed the report and council's conditions. I guess we do appreciate the effort the officer went through in the assessment of this application. But we do have concern with deferred commencement condition number 1, be it the deletion of unit 302, and it's replaced an area of open space.
Would you like to tell us your concerns about that? You in essence you're objecting to that condition. Is that what you're saying?
We are, Mr. Chair. The reason we are,
I'm sorry, we're having a little difficulty. You're breaking up a little, Mr. Moroz. Can you just bring the phone closer or just...
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can, yeah, thank you.
Okay. The reason we do have concern with that condition, I guess firstly, we're proposing for the apartment. Sorry, Mr. Chair, there's just a background, so I'm struggling to hear you.
We've now lost you altogether, Mr. Moroz. We can't hear you. Are you?
Can you hear me now?
I'm not sure if we're able to get a better connection. We can hear you now, yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. So our concern is that we are the apartments. The deletion of an
you're breaking up. You're breaking up again. So I'm not sure. Are you on speakerphone or you?
I've taken it off. Yeah, I've taken it off speakerphone. Is that better? Okay.
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
I'll keep it like this. So our concern is we're proposing 8 apartments, and the deletion of additional 1 would be 7 apartments. So in terms of what I can decipher from the review of council's report, it all comes down, I guess, to the breaching element associated with the communal open space. And I guess the visual form and the future relationship this building will have with neighbouring properties, which I think in council's report they said would be exacerbated by that breach. I would like to say that I guess in terms of the provision of a communal open space, we would probably like to argue that on a development of this size, that communal open space I don't think would vastly improve the amenity of any future residents. I guess firstly, the ADG doesn't delineate, I guess, between an apartment building of say 5 or 50 apartments. The provision of communal open space is based on site area. The subject site is located in very close proximity to an area of public open space, being Mead Park, which does offer a kids play area, barbecue facilities and the like. What, I guess the objective of the provision of a communal open space too, I believe, is social interaction. With an apartment with a single lift core and only 8 apartments, I guess within the building, a lot of casual interaction would occur throughout the building. So in order to try and, I guess, mitigate levels of, I guess, occupant isolation and the like, there is a lot of, when we believe that this development, given its size and capacity, would enable the provision of, I guess, ongoing interaction through the building, notwithstanding if the panel sort it fit without the provision of, I guess, a rooftop communal open space. I guess along the rear where this communal open space is being proposed with the deletion of a unit, it's not going to serve any benefit, I guess, from the streetscape and how the building presents and its relationship to neighbouring buildings. It being limited to the rear, its siting and location, and also the generous levels of separation between this building and the building to the rear of about 12.9 metres. It's not going to actually result in any beneficial privacy and/or I don't think it'll have any substantive impact when it comes to overshadowing. So, Mr. Chair, I do have Mr. Caravellis. I will transfer the phone over through to him. He's explored as to why the provision of a communal open space in this location without a major building redesign cannot occur. So if it's okay with both yourself and the other panel members, I'll transfer the phone over to Mr. Caravellis.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The communal open space that we have at the moment, which covers the whole of the rooftop, is in two parts. You come up the middle of the building, and there's a communal open space towards the street, and there's a communal open space towards the rear. The communal open space at the rear, you come out of the lift, and then there's a foyer area, and then you need to go up four steps to get up to the rear area. The reason being is because we're in a overland flow path, the rear of the building needs to be higher than the front of the building. So if we were to only have a communal open space at the rear of the roof and not have that front section, then it won't comply with disabled access, because there's 4 steps to access it. At the moment, we've got the front area of common open space on the rooftop, which is accessible for disabled access and provides that amenity. The other issue is that in council's report, they want an area of communal open space at the rear there, where they want us to remove a unit, but also an area of communal open space at ground floor at the rear. Now, in providing that, they want us to provide an access path from Noble Street to that area at the rear along the easement. Again, that would have to be something that would work for disabled access. It would be approximately 36 metres long, and it would wipe out a substantial section of our soft landscaping towards the neighbouring building. At the moment, we've shown shrubs along there that reach a 4 metre height. If we were to provide a 1 metre pathway through there, then the area planning would only be 800 left. So the amount of landscaping that we could provide there to soften the building to the neighbours would be significantly reduced. Also, council have suggested that if we were to provide that common open space at the rear in replacing the courtyard for that unit at the rear, which is unit GO2, they suggest we put the courtyard for that unit on the side, and that it be accessed through bedroom 2 or through the laundry, which wouldn't comply with the requirements of the ADG. It would also be due south of the building and would receive no sunlight. So it makes sense to leave the private open space for that unit at the rear as it is designed, which works quite well and which offers very good amenity for that rear unit. To lose that amenity and to lose the landscaping down the side for an area that I doubt would get used, and that is because to access it, you need to come down the lift, out the building, walk 25 metres to the street frontage, and then 35 metres to the rear. That's 70 metres. 150 metres away is a substantial park with barbecue facilities, child playground, and a large area to run around and kick a ball. And so that's my concern regarding that condition, regarding losing a unit and providing that common open space just in that area.
Does any panel member have any questions of either Mr. Moroz or Mr. Karavelis? We do. I'm going to start with Mr. Perdumo. If you just listen to the question and see if you can answer it for us. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Caravellis. I just had a question regarding the location of the fire boosters. I don't see them nominated on your drawings. Could you clarify where they're proposed to go?
If a fire booster is required, it would go 90 degrees to Noble Street on the side of the driveway against the boundary.
Thank you very much.
So there's a small area there that's about half a metre from between the driveway and the side boundary to 56 Noble Street. It would go in that vicinity there.
Would that be in a screened enclosure, or would that just
No.
be exposed pipe work?
Yes, it could be exposed. I mean, the system that we're looking at using, it's approximately 1,300 millimeters wide and about 1.5 meters high. So it's not a big system, and it would be against the colourblind boundary fence. So whilst it would be seen from the street, it's not a major distraction as such.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Mr. Karavelis, do you see the deferred commencement condition that's recommended in relation to flood planning? It doesn't seem to have been confirmed yet that the floor level is at 500 millimetres above the freeboard, or that the driveway ramp design will be, in terms of its crest, will be sufficient to stop water flooding into the basement in the 100-year flood event. Is that your understanding of the case as well?
Look, from my understanding, the levels that we've set do meet those criteria. Should council, should the panel look at approving this development, I'd be quite happy for a deferred commencement condition to go into to cover that concern. That the levels have been set to meet those requirements.
Well, there seems to be some suggestion, at least from the council's engineer, that it hasn't been confirmed to be the case, hence the need for the deferred commencement condition. Are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, look, we did have a flood study done by the company that has done the flood studies for council. We used the same firm. I mean, in terms of this concern that council has, this is the first we've heard of it. We haven't been asked to provide any additional information regarding this previously. So, but I'm quite confident that what we have does comply. And again, as a condition of consent, we're quite happy to meet that.
Can I indicate to you my difficulty is that I have a clause in the local environmental plan that requires the consent authority to be satisfied of certain things in relation to flooding, clause 6.3, and those matters include needing to be satisfied about the compatibility with the flood hazard, that the development incorporates appropriate measures to manage risk to life from flood, and I have a concern that I can't defer that particular matter. I'm just trying to understand as to whether you have any other information other than the information that's been submitted to the council at the moment that is responsive to the particular concern that's raised.
No, I haven't. I mean, we had that was submitted.
Right.
Again, this is the first time that
I can understand you
we've
might
been
be able to
notified that there's a concern.
I can understand you might be able to get further information, but there's a prerequisite of satisfaction in that clause 6.3 that we need to address, and I don't know whether we can actually do that by deferred commencement condition. So I'm just raising that matter as a concern at the moment. If what you've submitted is a report at the moment that then the council staff engineer has looked at, then we'll just consider it in the context of that information. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry, yes, was that Mr. Moroz? You want to say something?
So I think as William has stipulated, we have provided a detailed report prepared by WMA Water. And yeah, I guess this is the first we've seen this response in terms of council's engineer. But
right. So the report you provided is the flood assessment that's dated the 28th of June 2019. Is that
would be?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? No. All right. There's no other questions, gentlemen. So we're going to move on to the next matter now. We thank you for your submissions this afternoon, and as I've indicated earlier, we'll make a decision on this matter and in closed session, and that decision will be published on the council's website tomorrow. Thank you for calling this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Can I move on to the last matter on the agenda in terms of development applications tonight? That is the development application for 121 Mimi Street, Oakley. It's a development described as alterations and additions to a dwelling house. In relation to that matter, I have one person who is registered to speak, Mr. Greg Jones. Can we have Mr. Greg Jones come online, please?
Yes, President.
Mr. Jones, can you just confirm for us you're the architect for the proposal?
Yes, for the applicant, that's correct.
Thank you. You have the report that has been prepared for our consideration, that is the panel's consideration today. Was there anything you wanted to say in relation to that report or the recommendations?
No, we're just fully supportive of the conditions and the report today.
All right, thank you. Does any panel member have any question in relation to the application? No? Well, nobody has any questions of you either, Mr. Jones. So we thank you for being available this afternoon and registering to speak, but given there are no questions, I'm going to indicate we're going to move on to the next matter. And thank you for your attendance.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. The final matter on the agenda this afternoon is the matter in respect of which delegated authority has been given to this panel to determine whether the public exhibition of the draft Georges River Development Control Plan 2020 should commence. I don't have any speakers registered in relation to that particular matter. So in the absence of any speakers, I am going to call this meeting in relation to the open part of the meeting to an end, and the panel will now go and consider each of the matters on the agenda, and the decisions in relation to the four matters will be published on the council's website tomorrow. Thank you everybody for attending. The live streaming will now cease, as will the any of the telephone connections that have been arranged. Thank you.